You didn't hear this during all the glow of the political campaign which reelected our president. But guess what? In the last quarter of last year, the economy slowed down dramatically. But it didn't seem to hurt the stock market. The Dow Jones has been going up now for months.
Pat, now stocks are near record highs, and the housing market is getting stronger, too. Ephraim Graham tells us what's happening on Wall Street and Main Street.
The nation's economic growth rate may be slow, but the U.S. housing and stock markets are soaring. The Dow closed at its highest level in 5 years Tuesday, nearly hitting the 14,000 mark, and only 200 points away from its all-time high. The ongoing surge in the stock market is good news for American investors. The average 401k retirement account is up about 20% over last year.
These worst-case scenarios that people were looking at in 2008, they can start to say, all right, we're not going to go there.
The housing market is also pushing forwards. Home prices rose 5.5% in November compared to a year ago.
This is a miracle in motion. We haven't seen this in probably 7 years.
Housing prices have gone up 10 months in a row. Experts credit the progress to historically low interest rates.
Mortgage rates so low, it was just the best time. It was a steal.
But while the economy continues its slow recovery, both the Fed and economists warn what happens in Washington over the next several months could dramatically change things. Federal spending cuts are looming, and some say they could throw the economy back into a recession. Meanwhile, consumer confidence just dropped 8.1 points. The reason? When lawmakers reached a deal to avoid tax increases for most Americans, they did not extend the temporary cut on Social Security taxes. That means Americans are bringing home less money in their paychecks. But for now, both large and small investors are celebrating the good news from Wall Street, and many analysts expect new record highs for stocks in the years ahead. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Well, Ephraim, I'll tell you something. 10,000 Americans reach retirement age every single day. The baby boomers are getting older, and when they hit the 65 mark, they begin to retire and they start drawing Social Security and other pensions. That drawdown is going to be enormous in the next few years. And while things may look okay for stocks and the economy right now, Washington still faces a serious long-term problem on the horizon. Lee Webb has that story from the CBN newsroom. Lee.
Pat, the national debt is headed toward dangerously high levels that could threaten the U.S. economy. That's according to a report from a budget watchdog group, the Peter G. Peterson Foundation. That study says the debt could reach 200% of the economy. That much debt is hard to pay back without heavy taxes or inflation, and that could lead to another major financial crisis like the one we had in 2008. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia says it is a mistake to consider the Constitution a living document. Scalia says the Constitution is, quote, dead, dead, dead. And he says those that believe the Constitution is a living document mean it's flexible and changes with the times. The Dallas Morning News reports Scalia told a group of students at SMU that idea is wrong. He says a judge has to follow the law and the Constitution, not his own beliefs. The State Department is calling on Iran to release imprisoned American pastor Saeed Abedini. A department spokesperson tells CBN News they're deeply disappointed with the pastor's 8-year prison sentence. They're also concerned he didn't receive a fair trial. The State Department released this statement: "We condemn Iran's continued violation of the universal right of freedom of religion, and we call on the Iranian authorities to respect Mr. Abedini's human rights and release him." Pat, back to you.
Well, the idea of getting a fair trial in Iran is a joke. Who expects a fair trial over there? They do what the mullahs tell them to do, and the mullahs wanted to throw the book at this poor guy, and they put him in one of those outrageous prisons. It'll be a hellhole, and the chances of his coming out alive is probably very slim. But, while this is going on in Iran, now we might point out that Egypt is on the verge of collapse. That was the headline in today's paper. The Muslim Brotherhood has shown their hand, and they have they have taken the extreme position that those Islamists take. And who knows what's happening to the rule of law. But in any event, here's the story. Lee.
Pat, that's right. A high-ranking aide to Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi says the Holocaust never happened. He says Hitler's murder of 6 million Jews was a fabrication created by U.S. intelligence agencies. In a report on Fox News, Fatih Shihab Edom calls the Holocaust a myth and an industry America invented. He says the U.S. made up the Holocaust to discredit Germany and move millions of European Jews to the United States. Pat?
You know, it's this kind of, well, blindness, I guess, myopia, whatever term you want to give it, that seems to center on the Islamic people. They just believe lies, and they live lies, and they tell lies. And it's just extraordinary what's happening in Egypt. And guess what? The Obama administration is going forward to sell high, sophisticated, high-performance F-16 jet airplanes to Egypt. What are they going to use them for? They only have one potential target. There's nobody else. They're not going to bomb Sudan. They're not going to fight Syria. Who are they going after? Well, they're going after Israel, and that's what these planes will do. And why we went forward in light of what's happening in Egypt, I don't know. But in any event, that country is now in chaos. And yes, they say all these crazy things, but the biggest thing is they want to impose Sharia law on the people. And those who are independent, those who are Coptic Christians, those who are other religions, don't want it. And that whole country is in danger of breaking apart, and the Army may have to move in to restore order. Lee.
Here at home, Pat, a storm system you would typically see in the spring ripped through the nation's midsection. Lightning struck and injured one person in Arkansas. There are downed trees and even reports of tornadoes in that state. And at least 9,000 homes and businesses lost electricity.
I was leaving school and I got a phone call from a bus driver and said, hey, you have electric poles and trees down in your yard. And I got home and even part of the roof was down.
Wow. Chicago residents have been whiplashed by weather extremes. There were sub-zero temperatures and brutal wind chills a week ago, but temperatures soared to the mid-60s on Tuesday. A medical miracle for an Iraqi war veteran, the only soldier to survive losing both arms and both legs. Doctors at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore performed a double arm transplant on 26-year-old Brendan Morocco. They took donated arms and connected them to Brendan's bone, muscles, nerves, and skin. And it's fascinating to hear how the surgeons prepared for this complicated operation.
The surgical team had rehearsed the procedure on cadaver arms 4 times in the last 18 months, and the actual transplant was executed according to our design.
I really don't know what to say because it's just such a big thing for my life, and it's just fantastic.
Wow, he looks great too. Doctors say the nerves in Brendan's arms will regenerate 1 inch per month. He should have full use of them eventually, Pat, and Brendan says he looks forward to driving again and plans to hand cycle a marathon.
You know, one of the great doctors in America is Ben Carson, who is the one who separated conjoined twins. Nobody had ever done that before, and Ben Carson served with great distinction as a member of the Board of Trustees of Regent University. I believe he's going into inactive status. He's been head of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins. So this was done at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and it's one more kudo for that excellent group of physicians at that hospital.
The news that the Boy Scouts of America may lift its ban on homosexual members is not sitting well with many religious groups. Southern Baptist Convention President Fred Luter said, if that is what the leadership is doing, then I think it will be a sad day in the life of the Boy Scouts of America. To now see this organization that I thought stood on biblical principles about to give in to the politically correct thing is very disappointing. A decision on the ban is expected by the Boy Scouts as early as next week. An elite Iranian military unit and a terrorist group backed by Iran are stepping up their efforts to attack Western targets. The Washington Institute for Near East Studies reports the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah and Iran's Quds Force are a growing threat. The report says the two groups plotted more than 20 terror attacks together and independently between May of 2011 and July of 2012. Only one of those attacks succeeded, but the author concludes the groups are learning from their mistakes and improving their effectiveness. You can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.